and sound, and their security is guaranteed. We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes.
When those behind the current treacherous shenanigans, that when it comes to matters of protecting our revolution, the military will not hesitate to step in.
Zanu PF Muchita Musingadi Aleni Abandakutaura Sakumanda Army Shashandisa inonzi command voting. Yes.
In the past few weeks, headlines were made after the Zimbabwe National Army Commander, General Anselm Sanyatwe, addressing villagers waded into party politics. And his statement was very clear that even though as he wore that proud badge, that camouflage on behalf of Zimbabwe, his intended party to stay in power is Zanu PF. And he told villagers that the army would be involved in command voting to ensure that Zanu PF retains power into eternity. In fact, he said, Ushikira madongi amira nyanga, and we know that feat will not be achieved. The role of the military, the army, in our body politic in Zimbabwe. This is what we're going to be discussing on this, the situation right now here on HSTV. With me, your host as usual, Dara B. Now join me after this break as we discuss the army, people, power, guns, and politics.
And so we provide a platform to tell Zimbabwe's untold stories.
Future-proofing the next generation of Zimbabwe.
To building the economy through meaningful, objective dialogue.
We do this to foster empathy in an already fragmented environment.
Breaking the barriers in the digital world because the future is digital.
We pride ourselves in our thoroughness to research issues and topics which are current and will have an impact in the future. We are the Heart and Soul Broadcasting Services.
Welcome back to this, the situation right now here on HSTV. Please do not forget to just press that subscribe button on our YouTube page so that you do not miss these incisive discussions. Now, to help me discuss this very somewhat controversial, disturbing and concerning topic is Jealous Mawarire, political analyst, political player, and a journalist. Now, thank you very much, Mr. Mawarire, for joining me on this, the situation right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mklanga.
Beautiful. Now, we've specifically invited you to have this discussion around the army and as the kingmakers in Zimbabwean politics, because in the past you have been so critical about their role in politics. Now, let's just get into it. The statements by General Anselm Sanyatwe that have, attracted national concern. Let's talk about them. What do you see in them?
Maybe to put a bit of background before I answer your question, I don't think I've been critical of the army. I have just been vocal in trying to ensure that the various political players in Zimbabwe, and I mentioned in one discussion in 2019 that we should find a way of bringing together different political groupings, different political players onto the table to map a way forward, considering the unique circumstances that we are in. And I mentioned specifically the army
Yes.
That we should invite the army on the table, we should have civil society, we should have the church, and we should have political parties.
Yeah.
If I remember well.
Yeah, in that discussion, you mentioned the army. You mentioned the army as political players.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, I want you to zero in on that, because in that discussion, I know you were having that discussion when we were having this discussion, and we're talking about elections, and you mentioned the army specifically as political players.
Yes, definitely. I think one thing that we seem to miss, and normally when we have these discussions about the military participation in politics, we tend to gravitate towards the provisions of the Constitution, isn't it? The 2013 Constitution. But my problem, which then led to my invitation, the invitation that I extended to the army to say, let's come sit down and discuss, is that I have a feeling, a strong feeling, and I've researched on that the constitution-making process that led to the 2013 National Constitution did not involve the army as a key player in our politics. And the reason why I say that is that if you go back to the history of the army here in Zimbabwe, we have a revolutionary army that was born out of a liberation struggle. We have, for all intents and purposes, have a very political army, because if you look at Zanu, they had military wings, isn't it? And these military wings were peopled by not soldiers, not freedom fighters. They didn't call themselves, especially Zanu, they didn't call themselves freedom fighters. They called themselves political cadres. And these political cadres were directly under the command of the party. If you read the Mwenje document that was published on the 27th of November 1973, it's very clear about the role of the political cadres. The role of the political cadres was mass mobilization of people, recruiting of people that support Zanu, and the prosecution of the liberation struggle in terms of carrying the guns and fighting the war physically. Those were the political cadres. And these political cadres, by definition, were political. So these were military people that were political. They were involved in the politics of the day. And what they were waging, if you read that document, is very clear. It says, our revolution is a political revolution, and our objectives are mainly political. And everything that we do, every strategy that we employ, social, economic, and military, all those strategies are geared towards achieving a political objective. So we have, for all intents and purposes, politicians who then took up arms to fight the liberation struggle. So the balance that then we should strike is to say, on attainment of independence, how do we then build national consensus among different groups that we are having in the country, and including those political cadres who now find themselves in the army, in the police, and in CIO, the whole security sector, as it were. So that's why I was saying we cannot, as just political parties, sit here and say and come up with constitutional provisions that will exclude a very important and fundamental group in the society from national politics. Worse still, when this group was involved in the fight for the liberation of the country, on the understanding that they were politicians.
But Jealous, why can't they remove the military fatigue and go into politics full time? Because the liberation war struggle is finished. Why do they remain in the barracks?
I think that's why we are saying if we have political soldiers, if we have military people who are by definition politicians, we have to sit down with them and say, this is the country that we want to build. We want to build a society, a multi-party democratic society. And this is how we envisage you to contribute to the new nation. But where I have a problem is that we have a group of non-military people who did not participate in the liberation struggle, who then embark on an exercise to lift constitutional provisions, mainly from the South African Constitution, put it in the Zimbabwean context, totally devoid of the national sensibilities and the political historical sensibilities of our own nation. Because when you are talking of a constitution is a document that is ideally supposed to build national consensus. It is a rallying point, a rallying document from whence we extrapolate the national laws. But its overarching importance and objective is to bring our people together, to bring consensus. So you cannot then build consensus by excluding a very fundamental group of people that sacrificed themselves, that participated in the liberation of the country. This is where my argument is. That's the reason why I was saying, let's call them, let's discuss. If the constitution-making process did not involve them, let's involve them now and say, this is the kind of democratic dispensation that we want to build. How do you envisage yourself? How do you look forward to contributing to the building of this new nation? But you can't do that when you exclude them.
Were they excluded? Because in your opening remarks, Jelas, you said that the party was on the forefront and they belonged to a party, because clearly General Sanyatu's statement means they belong to Zanu PF. Chris Mchangwa has always said that Zanu PF and the army are one thing. I also remember, if my memory serves me correct, sometime just 2 years before the coup in Kwekwe at Africa Chromfields, President Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa introduced the then Army General Constantino Chiwenga and said, he is our political commissar.
Yes.
Right. So how were they excluded if they are part and parcel of Zanu PF, and Zanu PF was also a figure in the constitution-making process?
If you look at what happened in November 2017, it's actually a manifestation of that disconnect between the military and the party, and that precisely angered those that were in the military barracks, because the grouping, there was a grouping which was trying to separate the military from the party, and the argument was centered on the national constitution. Rightly so, because the national constitution outlaws partisan participation in politics by the military. But you see, where things get convoluted is that you have, on the other hand, the national constitution giving every Zimbabwean, including the guys that are in the military, the right to vote, isn't it? And I don't think there is any higher form of participation in partisan politics than going into a voting booth and choosing a political party. And this right is extended even to the people that are in military uniform. They vote. That's why we even have voting centers in military barracks. So on one hand, we are saying that they are allowed to vote, and they should participate in partisan politics, because there's no one who gets into that booth and vote for a non-partisan entity. You vote for political parties, isn't it? They make choices. It's either I vote for CCC or I vote for Zanu PF or any other party for that matter.
Independent.
Or you vote for an independent. But primarily what you do, the exercise of voting, is very partisan and it's political participation.
But
and
you,
the army
you do agree.
Participate in that.
Yeah, but you
so
do agree
where I
that
have a problem,
Jealous, you do agree.
If I can just finish.
No, I just want you to check this. Do you agree that I can vote for an individual and not want to be part of that party?
No, of course,
yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, but by extension, you can also vote for an individual and want to be part of their political party. It's a choice, and that choice is not only limited to the non-security sector. It's also available to soldiers. It's available to the police. It's available to those that are in other uniformed sectors, isn't it? So. That's where I have a problem. When you say someone can vote, someone can make a political choice, can choose a political party of his choice during voting, but you say, but that's only as far as your right can go. We don't want to hear you talking about the political party that you have just voted for. Does it make sense? For me, it does not make sense. If you don't want if you want to outlaw total participation of the army, then you should also ban them from voting. Because as long as they are voting, they are making subjective, partisan, political choices. And then, to get to General Sanyatwe's circumstance, then you have accorded him that right to choose a political party of his choice. Then he goes to his own village and he sits down like any other person. If I go to my rural village and I meet my fellow villagers, we normally talk about the political parties that we voted for. Does it then become a criminal offense if an army general without military fatigues go to his rural home and talks to his fellow villagers, and they talk politics? They talk about the political party that they voted for. I don't seem to make sense of it. If you say you can vote for a political party of your choice, that's your right. But if you have finished voting, you are not supposed to, unlike any other person, you are not supposed to talk about the political choice that you have just made, even among your people, your own people. We didn't see General Sanyatwe in military regalia addressing a political a press conference to say, we as the Zimbabwe National Army, we are going to do this and this and this and this in support of Zanu PF. What I saw is a villager talking to his fellow villagers about what happened. Because if we zero in onto that particular incident, for me the central message is embodied in the idea of the tree that he was talking about, isn't it? He said, at this tree, I came back from the war and I sat down on this tree. This tree signifies this, this, this. This was more a localized debate that was centered upon a tree that had significance within that village, political significance within that village. And I don't see any other way that he could have addressed the historical factors, historical facts, without making reference to his participation in the war as a Zanla cadre, political cadre, and as a soldier, as a liberation war fighter who fought the liberation struggle under Zanla. This is what he was talking about. And I think if we then take a video out of context, then try to take it, extrapolate it from Nyanga or wherever he said it, and put it on the national political agenda and say this that he was addressing to to his fellow villagers. And mind you, he was talking about Sabuku, the transference of leadership within that village cell. Mm-hmm. And then we take that and we make it a national problem, a sort of a political cocktail from which we are extrapolating national grievances and national problems. Then we run into a problem where even the spokesperson of the president, if he tweets anything about us now, will say the president is all about us now. If he talks about beer drinking at his rural home, then the whole presidency becomes identified with that particular localized event.
But firstly, Jealous, do you agree that General Anselm Sanyatwe, by taking up that post that he did take up, the Zimbabwe National Army commander, he loses some of the rights that you're talking about? He becomes a person with power and cannot speak like a common villager. Do we agree on that?
No, I don't believe that if you're a national leader, you don't have private spaces. The only problem that we had was discussions that were made in a private space being recorded. Those are the vagaries of the social media.
Let's
recorded and then put onto the national agenda. When the message was localized, the message was meant for the villagers. The villagers understood the message, understood the centrality of the tree and what it signified to them, what it signified to the fellow freedom fighters who were gathered there.
But this was not about a tree. Let me just read to you excerpts of what the chief said.
I listened to that. Yeah.
He said Zanu PF shall rule until donkeys grow horns. Mm-hmm. Right? Whatever your stated and expressed wishes, I am now speaking as the commander of the army. This is his words. I am now speaking as the commander. So the issues that you raise.
And he's talking to who? What's his audience?
Let's talk about him putting on the jacket of the army commander, because you want to separate him to be a common person.
Not really. Mm-hmm. Not really, because
he invoked his office.
I think
in that so-called
I think we have two different issues that we should clearly separate so that we can understand each other.
Yes.
We can talk about the Zimbabwe National Army and what it stands for. And if we talk about the Zimbabwe National Army and what it stands for, then we have to go to be very historical, to go to the very basis on which it was formed. The Zimbabwe National Army or the Zimbabwe Defense Forces was formed on the understanding that the Zimbabwe National Army is going to be different from the colonial armies which stood apart and away from the people. That was the very fundamental founding principle of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, as it is captured in the Mwenje document that I am referring to, the 1973 document. The 1973 document was very clear on the type of national army that we were going to form as an independent, liberated new nation. It's very clear, and I can read verbatim for you. The Zimbabwe Defense Forces will be a powerful force charged with the responsibility of defending the new nation and continuing the anti-imperialistic struggle in Africa. It will also play a full part in mobilizing and educating the masses in the new tasks of economic development and nation building. Unlike the colonial armies that stood away and apart from the people, the Zimbabwe army will be part and parcel of the people and their social system. It will be part of their political system and processes. Mm-hmm. This is the thinking behind forming the Zimbabwe National Army, the Zimbabwe Defense Forces.
I want to stay with the Mwenje document and with the excerpt that you read, Jealous. It says it will stand with the people.
Yes.
the people in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
The people in Zimbabwe
Yes.
are not generally Zanu
Yes.
PF. They're different political parties.
Yes.
So if the army then stands with a party, it leaves the people who don't stand with that party. Now, it is a complete departure from that document and from the ethos of what the army is.
It's not a complete departure. It's not a complete departure because in the same document, it says the party leads the gun. The party. And in this instance, the party was ZANU. ZANU leads the gun, which means ZANU leads the military forces. ZANU leads the defense forces. And the defense forces, in order to be led by ZANU, they should be members of ZANU. It's a no-brainer. You can't be led by something that you are not part of. Otherwise, how do you subscribe to its ethos? This is what we should have addressed. These are the realities that we should have addressed when we're coming up with a national document called our Constitution. This is what we should have been sensitive to. And this is precisely the reason why I was saying we are dealing with a command element of the army that was recruited into the army on the promise that they will be a political army. They will be participating in the political system and processes of the country. This is how. So this is how they were being. This is how they were being recruited.
Yes, I want to.
And when they made a choice, can I just finish? When they made a choice in 1980, can I finish this?
No.
So that we don't lose each other.
No, I'm not going to allow you to finish. I want you to respond.
Let me finish. I will respond. This is the basis on which they were recruited to join the liberation struggle. They were recruited on the basis that when we win the war and we form a new state, a new nation, the army that you are going to be part of will be a political army. It will be an army that will take part in the political system and processes of the country. This is the promise. And some of them, in 1975, Anakris Muzangwa, understandably, were recruited on the basis of this understanding. It's unfair then to say 33 years down the line, you then say, no, you were recruited on that understanding that although you join the army, you will still participate in the national politics of the country. But no, we have decided now to say we are banning you from participating. You cannot do that on your own. But it's the same. It's the same thing as. Can I finish?
You're not finishing.
No, I'm finishing. I'm just landing. It's the same thing as promising peasants that we are waging a liberation struggle. You support us. You give us shelter. You give us food. You give us information. We stay among you on the basis that when we win the war, we will give you back the land that was taken away by the settlers. Then, 16 years down the line, you have not addressed that, or else you come up even with a constitution that says you are not supposed to own any kind of land in Zimbabwe.
But Mr. Mawalile, is that fair? Mr. Mawalile, this sounds to me like people who are selfish, inward-looking, who would believe that nothing in this country should happen without them because they sacrificed their lives at that particular time for freedom of this country.
I don't believe this is a group that is selfish.
So why can't they remove? But if they are not selfish, why can't they remove one jacket? If they want to be in politics, they remove the military fatigue and join politics. They're free to do that. If they don't want to be in politics, they stay in the army and make sure that the army serves, as this document says, the people of this country. The people, whether they belong to Ndandu or Zanu PF, the military must serve all Zimbabweans equally.
No, I don't think they are selfish, but I think they are politically conscious. They are asserting their own rights. Like any other group. Like any other group. Mm-hmm. If what they are doing is averse to what you believe in, it means then we have conflicting positions, isn't it? And once you have conflicting positions and you are in the process of coming up with a national document that is called a constitution, then there's need then for negotiations. And that's the whole argument that I've been putting forward, that we have competing and conflicting positions on how the army should conduct itself. So we have to then sit down and find common ground for the good of the country. Because it's not good for anyone for you to feel threatened by the army participation in politics, and also it's also not good for the army to feel that they are being ostracized from the political runnings of the country. We have to find common ground, and the only way we can find common ground is to have dialogue and say what's the best way forward. But you cannot put the best way forward excluding a very fundamental and key part of the society. And these are people who are very politically conscious. It's okay for them who have been trained in politics before even they came to the guy. It's okay for them because they hold the monopoly of violence.
You wasn't talking about Mr.
To exclude other Zimbabweans from their wealth and the discourse of this nation. It's okay.
I don't even think that the army holds monopoly to violence, because Makorokoza they
hold monopoly to legitimate.
No, the Korokozas they are always everywhere.
Okay. Let me rephrase that.
Depends upon what you call violence. Let me because there's no one in my thinking who has a monopoly towards violence. But what we don't want is violence. And how do we then safeguard our country from violence? We don't have to leave anyone outside, because these are citizens predominantly. And you know, we always talk of military participation in politics, especially when these sporadic statements come out. But we have never had a situation in this country, if I have missed it, maybe you can point it out for me, where an army general serving or a colonel serving has contested for a parliamentary seat in Budiriro or anywhere for that matter. But we have seen teachers doing that, isn't it?
And they've been fired.
Civil servants.
Yes, and they've been fired.
And they've been fired. Yeah, but we don't have an example of a military guy who has contested. I've never seen one, but we've seen teachers participating. We've seen other civil servants campaigning and putting forward their names for political elections.
Are you comparing a civil servant and a soldier?
No, but they are civil servants also.
No.
They're
governed.
No, but they're civil servants.
The constitution. The constitution actually makes them different.
But the constitution But the constitution outlaws civil servants from partisan politics, isn't it?
Participating.
Yes. It does. It doesn't it? It does.
Civil servants can strike.
Yeah.
Civil servants can man polling booths, right?
Yes.
Civil servants can ensure people are voting.
Yes.
The military can't.
No, but the military can't. The military will ensure that there's peace and tranquility during voting.
It doesn't.
No,
it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
There's the police.
No, there's the police. No. They don't suspend their duties of ensuring
what is the duty?
The territorial integrity and safety of citizens.
Yes.
But simply because it's voting time.
When people
it's not suspended.
No.
The army carries on its duties.
I think I'm mixing issues.
As normal.
The army defends us from external threats.
Not only the external threats.
Internal domestic threats are dealt with by the police, unless the president deems it fit to invite them. So let us take this. Let us separate the army and civil servants.
Maybe your definition of external threats maybe is limited. You can have external threat by having a foreign country threatening the stability and national security of the country. But you can also have external threat being defined as an external force using internal foot soldiers to destabilize the country. It's still external threat. You can have me as a Zimbabwean advancing subversive policies, objectives
the police
of a foreign country.
Oh, it doesn't matter. The police have the right and power to deal with you.
No, that's different. If it becomes of a military nature, that I am a local. Okay, I'm a local. Okay, I'm threatening the very fundamental principles that define us as a country. It can still be, if I'm being used by an external force, it still becomes external threat.
Mr. Mawarire, when General Jinashe said the president of this country is a straight jacket,
yes.
Was there an external force?
Yes. In his definition, yes.
What was it?
The understanding within the army that particular time was that the opposition then was not a locally organized, funded opposition that was advancing its own objectives. It was advancing the objectives of a foreign country, and precisely so because we had very key and explicit policy positions announced on Zimbabwe in response to the land reform by Britain, by America, and other forces. That was the context within which that statement was made.
And our local courts, and our courts could not deal with that. Our laws internally allowed this opposition to be a legitimate political party, participating in our parliamentary space, participating in our governance, yet it was an external force deemed by the few guys who hold monopoly of holding guns legitimately.
But that was the understanding of general.
How do we allow a whole nation? How do we allow a whole nation to be run on an understanding of a general?
No,
a general who is appointed and reports to a civilian political figure.
But I think you are giving General Jinashe a lot of power that he didn't have. He made a statement. He made that statement.
Wearing the
yes, it was at a press conference, and he was actually pronouncing a policy position of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. But
the Zimbabwe Defense Forces takes orders from the president.
But what
you're saying, the president of this country is giving orders.
But what I'm saying, and which I think we have to analyze here, is that yes, he said that statement, and he said the presidency is a straitjacket. Whoever occupies that office, if you finish the statement, he should subscribe to the ethos of the liberation struggle, isn't it? That's what he said. He said, we are not going to salute anyone who is advancing the values and objectives of a foreign power. Isn't that what should be?
Who is he to determine someone?
He's the head of the army.
Of which army?
He's the head of the army.
Which army?
The head of the army that is supposed to be
which army?
Which is supposed to be safeguarding the territorial integrity of Zimbabwe.
Which army?
The Zimbabwe National Army.
And who is he? Just one person out of 16 million Zimbabweans to decide that this is a foreign interest. When the Zimbabweans themselves, who he is supposed to protect? Wait, Mr. Mawarire.
Was he making a statement as an individual, or it was a collective statement?
It doesn't matter. Collective from 3 people.
No, but you're saying he was one.
Okay, from 3 people.
No, it's not 3.
Who are they?
Those were people representing a whole institution called the Zimbabwe Defense Forces.
Mr. Mawarire,
and the Zimbabwe Defense Forces comprises the ZNA, the CIO, the prison services, and the police.
Mr. Mawarire, what is the purpose of an election in a country?
The purpose of an election is to choose leaders.
By who?
By the people.
And one person or 16,000. Let's give them numbers. Let's put them at 200,000 out of 16 million. Decide that these people are fools, because we hold legitimate violence. We hold a right to legitimate violence and legitimate weapons. We decide who we should salute.
General Zunavache stopped the 2002 elections. Did he?
He stole the election, right at a press conference.
No.
How do you hold a gun? Did he holding the power of a gun?
Did he deploy soldiers in order to stop people from going to vote? Didn't people vote in 2002? They did, didn't they? Didn't people vote in 2000? Didn't they vote in the parliamentary elections? They did. So yes, you can say you were not comfortable with the statement, but then to say that he stopped the people from voting, I think...
No, I didn't say he stopped. I didn't say he stopped.
So what are you saying?
I said he stole an election.
How?
What was the essence of his statement?
By defining...
What was the essence of the military?
He stole the election by defining the role of the president. By saying the president should abide by the ethos of the liberation struggle. What stopped every other candidate, every other presidential candidate then from subscribing to the same ethos of the liberation struggle to say
did they not?
No, so what's the problem now? What's the problem? You are simply reminding the presidential candidate that the president that we expect to be elected is a president that is going to abide by the ethos of the liberation struggle, isn't it?
But Mr. Mawadile, is it his role to do that?
What?
Is it the role of the military to tell people how a president must behave?
No, but
is it the role of the military?
But I've defined the Zimbabwe Defense Forces for you from the very founding documents that constituted or that influenced the formation of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. They made it very clear that our army will be within the people. It will be a people's army, and it will be a people that will involve itself in the political system and processes of the country.
What happened?
So what's wrong if they then make those announcements and make their projections and say, this is the kind of president that we expect to fill. This is the kind of person that we expect to fill the presidency. I mean, it's a straitjacket. You have to believe in the liberation struggle. Is that difficult for anyone who is aspiring to be a president to abide by the ethos of the liberation struggle?
Is it the role?
Is it criminal?
Is it the role of the army?
Which army?
Whatever army.
Let's not talk of the army in abstract. No, this is the role of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces.
When a member of a national army, wait, Miss Mawadi, when a member of the Zimbabwe National Army takes office or becomes a soldier, they take an oath to the Constitution.
Yes.
And does the Constitution allow them to do what they're doing? But that is the fundamental question.
But you are forgetting.
Why do they then take oath to something that they don't believe in?
But Mr. Mplanga, don't be historical. You have to look at even the Lancaster House Constitution making process, the negotiations thereof. You had a whole army general there, General Tongoga. He was there. He was part of the people that were negotiating. So the soldiers, the fighting forces, the revolutionary forces, fighting forces of this country have always been involved in the political processes of this country. That's the reason why.
These are two different things,
that's the reason why General Tongoga,
if you allow us to have a dialogue, it would be better.
No, that's the reason why General Tongoga attended the Lancaster House Constitution, representing the army. And this is the army that they envisaged to form. And I've told you, it is an army that will be involved in the political system and processes of the country.
General Tongoga was a leader of an army that belonged clearly to a political wing.
Yes.
Yes? The Zimbabwe National Army does not belong to a national wing.
No, there is... Comrade, I've read this document. I said
this document is not our law.
No, it's not our law.
Yes,
but it forms the understanding.
There is no one
gives us the background.
There is no one in the Zimbabwe National Army who took office holding this document.
It gives us the background to understand our Zimbabwe National Army. That's the reason why the late Vice President Nkomo said our army It's not a Salvation Army that will go play drums in church, then after that they go back to their houses. They will be involved in defending what they won during the liberation struggle. Didn't he say that? He was talking about the Zimbabwe National Army. He wasn't talking about Zipra. He wasn't talking about Zanla. He was talking about the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. He said, our national army is not a Salvation Army that will play drums in church, then after that they go home and they do whatever they want. They will defend what they won through the barrel of the gun. And they will not allow, he even goes on to say, they will not allow anyone to hand over power to those people that were fighting. So, yesterday,
Mr. Mawadide,
isn't what he said?
Mr. Mawadide,
no, I'm asking, isn't that what he said?
I'm not here to answer questions. Mr. Mawadide, if what you are saying is what matters, right? Why do we then go to elections year after year, after every 5 years? Why don't they just decide who they want to run this country?
You go to elections to choose your leaders, and the army has not stopped you from doing that. The army has just given you direction on, because they are also stakeholders in the political processes of the country. They say this is what we expect. This is what they are the
headmasters of our democracy.
Not.
So why would they tell us what they expect?
No, they are a key component of the society.
I know what I expect.
It's the same thing.
Because when I go into the ballot box, Mr. Wade, when any one of us Zimbabweans walk into the ballot, into the ballot to cast our ballot, we elect a person that we want to be our leader based on what I believe should be my president, not what a general of an army believes should be a president. Now, if I'm supposed to elect because a certain general believes that this is supposed to be the person I'm supposed to elect.
No, but I think you're being unfair, because you go and to elect a national leader of your choice.
Yes.
Based on things that you believe that national leader has to stand for.
Yes.
Maybe you don't want anyone who is corrupt. You say, for me, the most fundamental thing is that the president should not be corrupt. The president should have a heart for the people. He should be advancing national development. Those are the parameters that you are looking for. And these are guys who are in the security sector. And they also have a right as citizens to say, the leader that we expect should be a leader that abides by the ethos of the liberation struggle. And the ethos of the liberation struggle even coincide with all that you are saying. Did the liberation struggle condone corruption? No, they didn't. They wanted equitable land ownership and redistribution. Those were the ethos. So you are just uncomfortable because someone who is in the army has said that this is what we expect. We should stick to the ethos of the liberation struggle, for which all of us contributed. What's wrong with that? I don't see anything wrong with that.
You don't see anything wrong with a person who has control to the armory, defining what he wants?
Like what? Like who?
Remember, let me give you let me give you examples. President Emerson Mnangagwa defined now his vice president as the political commissar of Zanu PF, right? He then went further to appoint in the Zanu PF Politburo, albeit as an ex-official member, the command of the defense forces, Philip Valerius Banda, into Zanu PF. These guys are paid by taxpayers' money, money that is contributed by people from different walks of lives. Some who don't believe in Zanu PF, some who do, some who believe in different issues. And these guys sit there to defend the constitution that they took oath of office to. The ZDF commander, when President Emerson Mnangagwa was sworn in after winning, in fact, after the ouster, the coup of President Robert Mugabe, he came at the National Sports Stadium and signed an oath of office. I think he came in and signed. When he took oath of office, he signed and pledged to be loyal to the constitution of Zimbabwe. He said there, thousands of people were gathered. When President Mnangagwa was re-elected, he signed again. When he was re-elected, he signed again, giving his oath of office not to Zanu PF, but to the people of Zimbabwe. And honestly, it can't be right for an army commander to support and name a political party by name and tell people that he is going to introduce command voting, whether in a village or in a pub, and invoking the office, his office, a respected, revered office, that if any other person is elected into office other than President Emmerson Mnangagwa or Zanu PF, he continues to hold by the nature of his job. It can't be right, surely.
But Mr. Mhlanga, I think you seem to be having a problem with the army as an institution.
No.
Because if it is command voting is very prevalent in this country. It's very prevalent. If you have key opposition leaders going on social media, say, if you are in the diaspora and you are supporting your mother and your siblings here in Zimbabwe, and your siblings want to vote for Zanu PF, withdraw the remittances that you are sending them. Isn't that command voting?
I don't see it as
that's command voting. You are forcing people to make choices, your own choices, simply because you send them remittances. For me, that's command voting. If you then say, all of you who are opposition supporters, who are staying with the elderly people that you suspect would vote for Zanu PF, steal all their national IDs so that they don't vote on election day. What is that? Is that permissible? Is that good? Is that not command voting? That's command voting. For me, that's command voting. I don't even think General Sanyatwe was very serious about what he was saying. I think that was sarcastic. I think the sarcasm.
Why don't you think he was serious?
He was talking to his fellow villagers. I think that was just a village gathering where people were drinking beer and what. We don't even know the context for which they were gathered.
The video is clear. They were not drinking beer.
But that was not a rally. There were hundreds of villagers. You don't talk about kuti tichaisa sabuku ningi parali. That was purely a village meeting.
President Emmerson Mnangagwa.
No, we are talking about General Sanyatwa. That was a village meeting, and that village meeting he was talking to his fellow villagers, and we should understand what he said within the context of a village meeting where he was talking to his fellow villagers.
I don't mind.
And you could use any figure of speech that you want. You can be sarcastic in advancing the argument that the party of his preference, which is Zanu PF, which maybe he voted for in 2023, is going to rule until eternity. I think that was the message. And the message was very clear to the villagers. Let's not nationalize it when it was very localized.
Mr. Mawadire, you are the one who's been argued that we shouldn't be ahistorical.
Yes, right? Yes.
In a book by Blessing Miles,
Professor attend.
Yes. The army and politics in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Mujuru, the liberation fighter and kingmaker.
Yes.
He was in the army. He was a kingmaker.
Yeah.
And we all agree.
Yeah. And no, we don't all agree. That is Professor Tendi's submission. It's not gospel truth. That's how he viewed the General Mujuru.
He also,
for him, he was a kingmaker. But he was a kingmaker who failed to make his own wife king.
He also believed.
So was he a kingmaker?
Okay, no. I just want.
Did his wife?
I just want us to run through this. Then came,
let's agree that this is his perception. This is Professor Tendi's own perception. Is it true? It's subjective.
Then came Zinavash. Then came
no, Zinavash, we have spoken about what General Zinavash said. He just defined what the president of Zimbabwe should be. He should stick to the ethos of the liberation struggle, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
Then came General Chiwenga.
Yes.
General Chiwenga actually then made action, ousted a president out of a constitutional.
You know my understanding, and I'm privileged. In a coup. Right? You know my understanding of that, and I'm privileged to have sat down with the chief victim of that military operation, President Mugabe. My understanding was that there was a breakdown of trust and communication between the command element and the commander-in-chief, simply because of some characters who had actually strained that relationship. For me, the action, the November 2017 action, is fundamentally symptomatic of a breakdown in communication between the commander-in-chief and the command element.
And those who hold the real power behind
and the command element.
Yes.
Yeah. It was a manifestation of a breakdown of a relationship which is supposed to be cordial, and whence they were supposed to sit, because the joke, I think the joke was no longer meeting, and some key decisions that had everything to do with the command element of the army were being done by non-military people who were not even part of the executive. That was the disconnect. I'm not saying what they did was right, but I'm saying we should also ask ourselves why it happened. And we should be objective why it happened. And it happened so because there was that breakdown.
And they didn't think, and they honestly didn't think that the people of Zimbabwe had the eyes and could exercise their discretion during a ballot to remove people of that nature.
I think that's the danger. I think that's the danger of ostracizing a particular section of our people from the political system and processes of the country. If you ostracize them, you bunch them into a corner and you exclude them. It's a dangerous situation, because that situation is bound to pop out and explode at any given time. Is that the right thing? It's not the right thing.
The question is, look, my father served in the army.
Yeah, I know that.
As a captain of
Yes, I know.
And he participated in the War of Liberation.
Yes, I know that.
I have no problem with the army. I respect the army.
Yeah.
But does the army respect the people? Does the army?
Yes, it does.
When it thinks, the people does not think. Say no.
I've never seen
on the eve of an election, they had to come, sit down, wear their military fatigue, call the media, and say, we will not salute this kind of a person, because they felt that the people of Zimbabwe would not think they would vote the person that they didn't want to salute. If that press conference was not as important as you want to make it, why would whole gentlemen sit down, craft that statement, and issue it out?
But I don't think you're doing justice to you're doing justice to that, and even to the
I don't need to do justice. I need to put questions to you. No.
I don't justice. I didn't know that it was a question. I didn't know that it was a question. I thought it was a statement.
No, I said why.
That we are advancing. If it was a question, I was going to address it.
Okay, so it started with why. Why? I said, if it was not that important, why did all the...
No, it was important to them. It was important to them to remind the people. But reminding the people does not necessarily mean that the people are not wise, that the people are not smart, that the people are stupid. The whole idea of you campaigning is to remind the people that this is where we are going, we are having elections, and this is what we expect of the leaders that were supposed to.
Campaigning is not reminding.
No,
it's canvassing.
No, yeah.
Yes. It's trying to influence.
But do you canvass to people on the understanding that the people are foolish? They don't make their own choices. There's a difference. You make your thoughts. You make your thoughts known. Then the people are going to make choices on the basis of information that is there to them. And the National Army, through General Zunavashe, just reminded people that the president should be a person who respects the ethos of the liberation struggle, and I don't see anything wrong with
Mr. Mawarire, reminding and telling people are two different things. When you say the presidency is a straitjacket, it's not a reminder.
No, it's a reminder.
No, what is it? It's a
reminder. You are just reminding. You are putting the statement into the public domain so that you can jolt people to think and know and remember that the president is a straitjacket, and the person that we expect to fit into that office is a person who is prepared to respect the ethos of the liberation struggle. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Do you know that if you, for instance, are on the street and I say, remove that jacket, you will not remove it. But if you are in my house and I say, remove that jacket, you will remove it.
I will not remove it. Why? Why would I?
Because you're in my house.
No, but this is my jacket. So coming into your house doesn't mean that I have to take off my clothes.
If you don't,
does it mean that?
If you don't want to remove your jacket in my house, you leave, right?
Is there an inscription on the door that says when you are coming in here, you should take off your jacket?
If I put it there, you will.
I will not enter the house.
Exactly.
I will not come in and remove my jacket. I will simply not enter your house.
What I'm basically saying, what I'm basically saying is that the army has authority deposed on it.
Yeah.
Right? If someone says, do not support your mother if you are in the UK, they have no authority over you. If you decide not to support, it's up to you. They can't do anything to you. But if you are in
what did the army then do after making that statement? Do they go door to door, making sure that this one is not going to listen to what we said, then force them to listen. There's no way you can make a statement and you can force people to take the statement as you have put it. It's impossible.
Are you not aware that our elections...
Even God himself, he says, I will be your only God. But there are a lot of people with different gods.
But are you not aware...
God as powerful as he is. I will be your only God. He says that. But how many gods are out there? How many people believe in different gods who are different from the Almighty? Several gods.
Mr. Mawarire, are you not aware of the levels of violence that have been inflicted in the people of Zimbabwe just before and after elections?
I precisely know.
Are you not aware, Mr.
I'm aware not only on the violence that have been visited on the people of Zimbabwe by the National Army or by anyone who purports to be the army, but I'm aware of even the violence that is being visited upon the people now by people carrying machetes in Mazowe only last week, and I think the media has not covered it. 1,000
I think
machetes carrying people. No, we're talking about violence. We're talking about violence, and if we are addressing violence, let's look at violence as violence. This society is very violent. Even the way we interact, even on social media, you can actually see that we are predisposed towards violence. There is a lot of violence in our society. And if we want to deal with that violence, let's be in a position to have conflicting ideas and marking it. No.
You're creating your own example.
No. I'm not doing that.
Answer my questions, Mr. Mawarire.
No, but I'm answering all along. No,
Mr. Mawarire, I am asking you a simple question here. Are you aware that state-sponsored violence is different from violence that you want to talk about?
Are you aware of that? I'm giving you a very simple answer that the violence in this country is not limited to only the violence that is being perpetrated by those that you claim to be linked to the state. There is violence everywhere. It's not a claim. I saw today a group of very young people who have been arrested. And what were they doing? Beating some young girl somewhere. We are just naturally a very violent society, and we need to deal with that violence. Whether you call that state-sponsored violence or the state is complicit because it's failing to provide a security network around its citizens, then it becomes a very different ballgame altogether.
Exactly my point.
But the bottom line,
it is a different ballgame when it's done by the state.
But the bottom line is that this society is very violent. It's violent, and we have to find ways of dealing with that violence. And I'm saying where you have conflicting ideas about the participation of the army in national politics, where you strongly believe that the army should not participate in partisan politics, and where the army strongly believes, because of its history, that they are supposed to participate in partisan politics, then we have conflicting ideas that call for national dialogue. That's why I was saying, let's sit down, let's forget about the 2013 constitution, because this was a negotiated constitution between two political parties. Let's have an all-inclusive constitution-making process where we say these are our realities. This is the national army that we have. This is what we expect. Do we want our army to be modeled along the Chinese or Singaporean model, or we want it to be along the British American model? Then we sit down and we agree, but we should involve those that are in the army in those discussions, so that we come with a document, we come with a position that both the citizens and those in the uniformed forces are going to respect. But if we have those outside the security sector coming up with laws that would ostracize a whole section of a society, we are creating problems for ourselves.
I mean, we've run out of time, but we'll just take a short break and we'll be right back with you. This is the situation right now. With me, your host as usual, Dara B.
And so we provide a platform to tell Zimbabwe's untold stories,
future-proofing the next generation of Zimbabwe,
to building the economy through meaningful, objective dialogue.
We do this to foster empathy in an already fragmented environment.
Breaking the barriers in the digital world, because the future is digital.
We pride ourselves in our thoroughness to research issues and topics which are current and will have an impact in the future. We are the Heart and Soul Broadcasting Services.
Welcome back to This The Situation right now here on Heart and Soul TV and radio. Now, you should choose us as your station of choice, because nothing cannot be discussed here. We give you the issues. We answer the questions, so what? We put the questions that you have to the people who matter. Now, as we went to the break, you were talking about how people should sit down with the military and have a conversation to say this is the army that we want. The army is a creation of the constitution and is the creation of the people. Normally, the power to govern, to run a country should be deposed in the people and not those with guns. But just as we conclude, I just wanted to look at this in the book, The Army and Politics in Zimbabwe, Mujuru, the liberation fighter and kingmaker. It says here that Mujuru, that Robert Mugabe was Mujuru's nephew, or rather a distant relative. The key role Mujuru had played in elevating Mugabe into the leadership of Zanu PF during the liberation struggle, and how they and their comrades then brought independence and dealt with the transition period. Mujuru was appointed as chief of the army after independence, and in this position oversaw the integration of the liberation fighters into the army. The book then delves into post-independence politics, inter alia provides details on the operations in Matabeleland, which some call ethnic genocide or ethnic cleansing. We learned that in terms of the chain command, Rex Nongo, who's Mujuru, bears ultimate responsibility, but was in effect not in control of the North Korean trained 5th Brigade, which was running the operation. Rather, that infamous brigade reported directly to Mugabe and Emerson Mnangagwa. While Tendi uses several pages to present the details related to this, we at least learn from one paragraph that the other military operations against dissidents which Nongo controlled were exceptionally ruthless. Now, This is the history of the army, as put by Professor Miles Stand. And how do we break, in conclusion, how do you break from this chain of violence and desire to control resources, and who runs this country going forward?
I think what you have alluded to there is a subject that we need to interrogate as a country, as a nation, without fear and without favor. I have had the privilege of discussing to a very great extent, and I'm glad that I captured a lot of our discussions on video with President Mugabe over what happened in Matabeleland in 1983 up to 1987, which for him, if you would listen to his account, and this is an account that he made in my presence and in the presence of other two journalists whom I am not trying to drag into this conversation, but they are very senior journalists who are there living now, they are there. He made it very clear that the operation in Midlands and Matabeleland was an operation that was sanctioned by cabinet. And he says, if there is anyone who should bear the blame, it should be collective, and I stand above as the head of state, as the prime minister then. But we were making collective decisions based on information that we had gathered.
Like you said, it's an issue
Let me finish. Let me finish.
I thought
you wanted me to explain.
I want you to.
He then referred me to President Kenneth Kaunda. And he said, I phoned Kaunda and inquired that
Mr. Wale, I've run out of time, but I want you to talk about how we break from this history of violence, or this manner in which
we have to be very truthful. We have to be truthful, and we don't have to pursue a single story about what happened. This is a very complicated issue that we should interrogate without bias, because the danger is to pursue a narrow narrative, a one-sided narrative that says the army just woke up one day and thought of going into Midlands and Matabeleland and started hacking people without any historical understanding of what was happening. He mentioned President Mugabe in that interview, and I have it recorded. I will publish it one day. He said, we gathered from Brigadier retired Ambrose Mtiniri that these former Zipra forces were planning a 0 hour that were molded around the Angolian 0 hour that was done in Angola to try to stop MPLA from getting into power. He said that. And he said that we had gathered information that there were two containers of ammunition. One was already in Zimbabwe and the other one was coming through Zambia. That's when he referred me to President Kaunda. Said, you can verify this with President Kaunda, because he said, I personally phoned Kaunda, and Kaunda being a very nice guy, he said, Robert, I didn't think there was any problem ZAPU importing arms of war, because they used to do that during the war. And we cleared one container, as we usually did during the liberation struggle, and there is one coming. And he said, I then said, Kaunda, but we are now an independent state. What does a political party need to do with arms of war? This is a national security issue. And that's when he said, then I assigned Emerson Mnangagwa, I assigned this former Minister of Defense and former Minister of Sydney Sekaramai, and other guys to go and investigate that. So it's a whole complex issue. It's a complex issue where there were suspicions that a rival political party was bringing into the country arms of war. And there were also a lot of issues which happened even at Connemara, where Zipra forces started killing former Zanu forces.
To cut you,
yes. So let's remove emotions and let's deal with that, and let's see how the state reacted to the information that they had, whether there were excesses. And President Mugabe, mind you, acknowledges that soldiers being soldiers, there were excesses in terms of how they conducted themselves. But let's look at that thing without emotion, without being emotive, and say what had happened, what led to this.
I'm not sure if the people who suffered that violence would be okay to
we want to heal past. We want to heal wounds of the past. And we can only do that if we begin to engage in very honest conversations that are based on the truth. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa dealt with the atrocities of apartheid on the basis of truth-telling, not on the basis of point scoring and advancing a narrative, a tribal narrative against one tribal group, bedeviling the other and raising the others as Puritans. No, there are no saints and sinners in this whole thing. We are all sinners, and we should.
I'll definitely invite you for a part 2, and then we can have this discussion because we have run out of studio time. But nevertheless, very important conversations and discussions and perspectives that we have. Zimbabwe is a nation for all of us. And
including the army,
all of us,
including those that are in military fatigue. It's their country.
Yes,
the political processes also affected them. The economic, social processes affected them.
Certainly,
so they should participate.
Those in the army, our fathers. Yes. My father in particular, our brothers, our sisters. Yes, and they believe they also have a right.
Yes, to vote.
In Zimbabwe,
to choose a political party of their choice.
They also have a right in Zimbabwe's body politic, and they have a voice. They must be listened to. Everyone must be heard.
Yes.
And on this platform, we allow all voices to be heard. We strongly believe, that the people of Zimbabwe should talk to each other and not through each other. That nation building is not something that is done by force or coercion. It is something that is done by talking to each other, believing in the best interests of this country. We here at the Heart and Soul TV and radio, we're the heart and soul of the nation, and we believe that once we begin talking to each other, once we begin understanding each other, Zimbabwe can be a better place. Now, I'm your host as usual, Darabi, and I was in conversation with my Mkwasha Jealous Mawarire. Thank you very much for joining me and for giving us this insight. But certainly we need to invite you back and have a conversation around this, and probably you might favor us with some of the excerpts of your interview.
We can share.
And we can play a bit of the excerpt, not the full interview, but a bit of the excerpt on this, and we have this discussion around the Gukura Hundi and how troops were deployed and how this continues to affect people in Zimbabwe today, especially when the army wades into politics again.
If it advances national dialogue, I will gladly do that.
Beautiful. Until next time, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and make sure that we continue to survive to give you these incisive debates. They won't happen anyway, except on this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Beautiful.